And good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing okay. It is another Sunday and time for some stories.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Just sharing the YouTube link to the chat in case DLive is playing up for anyone. I know we don't too much like YouTube, but sometimes it does tend to work a little bit better. How is everyone?
I hope everyone is doing okay. And I hope you guys are excusing me. I forgot to add some filters to the microphone, so I'm just doing that now. Hopefully that is a bit better.
And the microphone is complicated. When you have these fancy microphones, they're a steep learning curve, I think, aren't they?
No, it's just that OBS keeps turning the microphone off when I add a new scene, so I have to go in and change that. Welcome everyone, and thank you to Besot for the ice cream, and to I Agree for the diamond. Spring is indeed coming. We have 2 more hours of daylight now, and that actually makes quite a bit of difference.
That it does.
Yeah, and Beholder Chair is telling us that 1080p doesn't work for him, but we are downscaling it to 360, so I'm not sure why that doesn't work for me. I can't get any lower on one of the settings than 1080p, so you might have to change your device, I'm afraid. Is it buffering badly?
I don't know a place where we could fiddle with it in DLive. I don't know if we can tell DLive to stop doing whatever it's doing with our stream. But yeah, it goes out at 360.
It's not buffering for me on 2 devices, so
yeah.
I'm
not sure. For me, but my internet's really bad.
It can buffer for me when I'm streaming, but other than that, I usually don't have a problem. But then everything is buffering when I'm streaming, so because it takes a lot of bandwidth. Let's check on YouTube.
Yes, how's YouTube doing? Hello, YouTube. How are you doing, YouTube? Got any buffering?
No buffering for me. That seems to be okay. So,
you've got a tad little bit quiet there.
I usually have to talk a bit louder for the streams than I usually do, so I go down to my default volume, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it's much better now on DLive, and for I Agree and for Sparky it's okay, so that's good. And good evening, God in the Greenwood and Steve MM on YouTube. It's good to see you guys. And I hope you will enjoy our stories for today.
Yes. Managed to get one actually about literal resurrection, and there are a few others generally related to the other themes of Imbolc and Spring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean it's appropriate. We decided to do this one because it naturally led on from the death episodes.
Yeah, and when it comes to resurrection and all that, it heavily relates to the theme of people who are sleeping for a long time, years and years and everything. You could make the argument that they are dead. Because, how do you manage to sleep and survive if you sleep for 100 years, for example?
That is true. That is true. Yeah. But another reason why we are going for Resurrection is obviously because spring, and yeah, there's a few festivals about to go on. On the pagan side of things, there's Imbolc, and on the Christian side of things, there is, I believe, Candlemas on 1st of February, and I don't know if this seems to clash. Candlemas and the feast day of Saint Bridget seem to be at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we shall be talking a bit, especially about Bridget, whose opinion, well, maybe my opinion is not some other people's on Saint Bridget. I'm going to try not to assume too much about her. We shall get into that later.
Indeed we shall.
Well, we shall get into it after the story.
Yeah. You want to do it now?
Yeah. Sure. It's only a short one. We can... I'm hearing myself on your end, Lynx.
There's no echo on my side.
Cool, good. That'll just be me then.
Yeah. The mystery of the internet. It does some funny things at times.
Especially with audio. As
yeah.
we know.
Yeah. Audio is so hilarious at times with all the problems you can have. And it was maybe a couple of weeks ago, Frode Midjord on Guide to Culture had to use his spare microphone, and for some weird reason it sounded really different from what it usually do. So his voice was really different than what it usually is. So he almost ended up with somewhat of a voice like this, which was quite funny. But apparently it doesn't sound like that as usual. So audio is a mysterious thing as far as I'm concerned.
Which means if I get a different mic, will I stop sounding like Madflouse?
Maybe that's the answer. Maybe.
It might be the answer. Might indeed.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. Yeah, I've been trying to get at the D-Live Lemons, been having some trouble. But once we can get at those, hopefully my mic will no longer be a potato metaphor.
Yeah, or a tin can. And I'm good to see you, Dame, as always. I'm getting some audio stuff as well as soon as I can, which will be very soon, which will improve my audio as well, hopefully. So yeah, we're getting there one step at a time.
Indeed.
Yeah, but shall we jump into Saint Bridget then?
Yes, this story is about Saint Bridget and her very odd cloak.
Okay.
The legend of Saint Bridget's cloak. The legend of Bridget's cloak is often told. It's the story about the manner in which she came to acquire the land, to build her monastery at Kildare. It's often regarded as one of the first miracles associated with her. The King of Leinster at that time was not particularly generous, and Saint Bridget who found it not easy to make him contribute in a respectable fashion to her many charities. One day, when he proved more than usually miserly, she said at last, as it were in jest, "Well, at least grant me as much land as I can cover with my cloak." And, to get rid of her importunity, he consented. They were at that time standing on the highest point of ground at the Curragh, and she directed 4 of her sisters to spread out the cloak, preparatory to her taking possession. They accordingly took up the garment, but instead of laying it flat on the turf, each virgin, with face turned to a different point of the compass, began to run swiftly, the cloth expanding at their wish in all directions. Other pious ladies, as the border enlarged, seized portions of it, to preserve something of a circular shape, and the elastic extension continued, till the breadth was a mile at least. "Oh, Saint Bridget," said the frighted king, "what are you about?" "I am, or rather my cloak is about, covering your whole province, to punish you for your stinginess to the poor. Oh, come, come, this won't do. Call your maidens back. I will give you a decent plot of ground, and be more liberal for the future." The saint was easily persuaded. She obtained some acres, and if the king held his purse strings tight on any future occasion, she had only to allude to her cloak's india-rubber qualities to bring him to reason.
Our first story for tonight was quite a short one.
Yes, it was quite short. I tend to find that sometimes with the stories of the saints. They're very sort of isolated, small incidents. No, they tend to have collections of miracles.
Yeah.
I think that's the second story about a saint that we've had on the show, aside from Saint Dunstan and his exploits with the devil.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, the reason I wanted to tell a story about Saint Bridget is, well, there's debate as to whether she does or does not link back to something pre-Christian. So, I've mentioned this festival at the start of the show. I've mentioned Imbolc. Well, it's actually probably more pronounced Imbolc. And that comes from an Irish word that was originally thought to mean in the belly. Although many translate it as ewe's milk, because it's also spelt oi milk, which you can hear the cognate there. You can definitely hear the cognate. And Imbolc was really one of the cornerstones of the Celtic calendar. It was for the success of the new farming season. And, winter stores of food would have been getting low. And so rituals around this time would have been really important and harness divine energy that's going to ensure a steady supply of food until the harvest 6 months later. Whether or not you do believe in harnessing of divine energy to help that sort of thing. But, I do believe that would have been important and that would have helped them. So, like a lot of Celtic festivals, at Imbolc, you light a lot of fires. You light a lot of fires, and it's the holy day of the goddess Brigid, or, well, some pronounce it Breed. So she's a goddess of fire and healing, and also fertility. And the lighting of fires sort of celebrated the increasing power of the sun over the coming months. So in the Christian calendar, this holiday was reformed and named Candlemas, when candles lit to remember the purification of the Virgin Mary. Which, again, I know that's maybe a thing where it's like, do the pagan and Christian festivals share that date solely for those reasons? But a lot of the things, when Christianity did come to Europe, it did adapt to the calendar that was already there, and so the Feast of the Virgin Mary has ended up on that day as well. So it's still very much celebrated by pagans, particularly Celtic ones, and modern pagans tend to think the horned god reigns over the autumn and winter, and this time is when sort of Breed is back again. Yeah, so there's a lot of connections between this time and fire and fertility, and also the doing of various odd jobs.
Yeah, well, I do think that fits quite nicely in with Yule, because that is also a time for fire, and naturally it's the coldest time of year. So at least in Northern Europe, that should be quite natural.
Wow.
But you do have the Yule log and all of that, so it's a nice continuation.
I mean, Yule is something that's also going on around this time. For some pagans, you see, on the 28th, if you're following the lunar solar calendar, and you're marking Yule by the moons, as I think Survive the Drive put out on his Telegram channel, it was after the Yola on the 28th of January. So I marked that myself. That's quite nice.
Yeah, indeed.
It was good. So there's a lot of stuff going on around this time. It seems to be a concentration of festivals, and I guess that makes sense because everybody wants to have a nice festival when it's miserable. I suppose it's a midpoint.
Yeah,
it's something to actually do in January.
Yeah, you have to do something.
From the most cynical interpretation.
Yeah, you have to do something during winter, so why not have a festival?
Indeed.
I do think it's partly that it's become a mix of pagan festivals and Christian festivals. Because as you will learn in February, there's not all holidays that the church wanted to take over, at least not all of the time, but they first introduced some Christian theme on them, and then later didn't want people to Christian people to celebrate those holidays at all because they were quote-unquote pagan in their origin. So to be a good Christian, you shouldn't do it. That is in summer as well. In Norway, back in the day, the most fervent Christians didn't want to celebrate Midsummer's Eve. Where, we had bonfires and dancing, basically just a summer party. And in particular, the priests, they forbade their family to partake in that.
Yeah.
But I do find that a bit interesting, as sort of a loggerhead between the old and the new, so to speak.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly you've had banning instances of certain festivals in Britain and England. Like, Cromwell tried to ban Christmas because that was too pagan.
Mm-hmm. And in
So it's been
Scotland,
quite.
didn't
Oh yeah, it was banned for
Scotland,
ages in
yeah,
Scotland.
poor Scots, didn't even have Christmas during winter. You know, as it is particular at my latitude and further north. One of the greatest things of this time of year is tracking the progress of the sun. You know, when the sun finally peeps back up through between some mountain tops or something, then you know, it's just, it's here, it's finally here, it's back.
The sun,
Yeah,
the actual sun.
yeah.
What?
You know, so I do
Yeah.
make the arguments at times that Scandinavians, at least Norwegians and Swedes, and probably Finnish and Icelandic and all of that as well, we basically worship the sun because it's so dark during winter that
very solar. Evola would approve.
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah, but apart from the days sort of lining up and, you know, both the Christian and the pagan festivals being sort of in line with the calendar and being sort of in line with the sun and the moon, sometimes the figures get a bit blurry. And I think Bridget is one of those figures where she may have actually existed, but then taken on goddess-like attributes. I'm not trying to claim that Saint Bridget didn't exist. She seems to be quite well documented, but I think she's picked up aspects of something colder.
Yeah, well, I do think that's quite common. As I've mentioned before, the late Simon Harris, his view was that in Spain, that their Christianity is, in his mind, was almost a cult of Mary.
Oh yeah, I can get that. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I don't know Spain, so I won't make that claim myself, but he lived there for 30 years until he died last May, and may he rest in peace. But that is mirrored in Norway in a way, because the old faith didn't quite die, not in the female aspect, where several of the female goddesses were worshipped up until the 1700s. So I do think we see that in female saints, that they sort of have they sort of take that need for the female aspect that can, for some people, seem to be lacking in Christianity.
That is the thing that I do perceive it sort of lacking in strains of Christianity which don't have Mary and female saints and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do think it might be in the presentation of it that all of the wording ends up being very male, so to speak. But these days, of course, things are often taken in the complete opposite. So, you know, God is female and all of that, which is
woman.
Yeah, you know, that's not really the point.
That was cringe.
Yeah, it's all of that is basically so idiotic. So please don't think that's what I'm arguing for. but I do see how some versions of Christianity might feel a need to have a balance with the female. That's what I think most people are after, a balance. And it's always sort of a tug back and forth between that. But we should try to keep to the middle point and not swing too hard to either way. We're supposed to work together.
So, yeah, I think that is true. I mean, Bridget is one of these sort of main female figures of veneration in Ireland. I think a lot of people still take inspiration from her. She does appear to have historical records about her. She's like born in the year 451 AD. This I think is called Fogart. I'm going to not pronounce Irish names correctly. Just to say, I don't actually know any Irish Gaelic speakers. But yeah, she seems to have been recorded as being the daughter of a Christian Pict slave who'd been baptized by Saint Patrick, and they named her father as Dubtak. Dubtak. Goodness only knows how you pronounce that. A chieftain of Leinster, and you've got then you've got into the bits where it's sort of like legends of her early holiness include her vomiting when a druid tried to feed her due to his impurity, and a white cow with red ears appeared to sustain her instead, which is one of the things I'll have to double check, but Breed being a fertility goddess, I think she has got somewhat of an association with cows and milk and stuff like that. And then, she was said to have performed miracles, including healing the poor. And she's apparently quite a troublesome child, just giving away her mother's entire store of butter. All the butter's gone. Why? I gave it away. Probably shouldn't laugh. She's trying to be charitable. But yes, she had a real habit of giving away all of her parents' stuff to the poor, which is very commendable. Very commendable, but yeah. It's kind of inconvenient, I would say.
Yeah. There do seem to be quite a few of those kinds of stories going around all over the place. So I do find that quite interesting.
Yeah. I think Bridget is sort of, she's associated with flame as well, which is something that Breed is also associated with. Breed is also associated with flame.
Yeah.
And she's on the site of pagan shrine to the Celtic goddess Breed when she builds her monastery in 480, and there was apparently an eternal flame there, and the site's under a large oak tree. So that's also is pointing to something quite old, because oak trees have really had significance to the Druids from pre-Christian times as well.
Yeah. Does she have any connection to home and hearth?
Well, she has, I think, a little bit of connection to that. I mean, she is an abbess, so she's essentially the mother of the community for a group of women who are committed to, you know, vows of chastity and poverty. What she does, I'm not sure she's specifically associated with home and hearth, but she is associated with founding a school of art, including metalwork and illumination, which are also two things that Breed is associated with. But you will still have, in Ireland, I think they will still make Breed's crosses. And there was still, I think, the tradition of going round and making Breed's a bed for Breed in the house, or Saint Bridget, I think that became. I think that tradition did seem to carry on in Ireland. So some of the stuff. I mean, her cross looks suspiciously like an ancient Indo-European symbol,
Yeah.
as you probably saw.
Yeah.
In the story. It's very very Indo-European cross, that.
Yeah. Well, that does seem to be a tendency. That the Indo-European element seems to. It just survives, basically. I do think it's one of its greatest perils have been in the latter years, since the Second World War.
I appreciate I Agree's comment about it. Like, it seems she'd be buying game stonks with her parents' money if she was still alive today.
And don't forget going over to silver these days.
Yes. Bridget would be joining in the short squeeze.
Yeah.
Squeeze those hedge funds. Oh, nice. If I had enough money to buy stonks, then I would.
Yeah, so would I.
If I knew how to buy stonks, I would.
Yeah.
I know nothing of stonks.
I might have joined in with the silver rush. And from what I hear, it's quite a few young men in their 30s doing that, so... Never underestimate Reddit.
Never underestimate Reddit. Or 4chan.
Yeah.
I believe the two groups, Biz and Wall Street Bets, are somewhat extensions of each other, aren't they?
Probably. I just find it kind of funny, and you know, all of the squealing that ensues.
I mean, yeah. Certainly Bridget's not the only time she got one over on someone with the cloak. She's got another incident where her brothers are really annoyed at the loss of her bride price, because of course, you know, she's committed chastity. And a man named Basine said to her, "The beautiful eye which is in your head, which will be betrothed to a man, though you like it or not." In response, Bridget thrust her finger into her eye and said, "Here is that beautiful eye for you. I deem it unlikely that anyone will ask you for a blind girl." Her brothers tried to save her and wash away the blood from her wound, but there was no water to be found. Bridget said to them, "Put my staff about this sword in front of you." After they did, a stream came forth from the ground. Then she said to Basine, "Soon your two eyes will burst in your head." And it happened, as she said, which is pretty metal. I gotta say.
Don't mess with Bridget, in other words.
No. Should make your eyes explode in your head.
Yeah.
She's also seems to have control over fertility here. because one of her nuns, well, this is in sort of, there's translations of Cogitosus, which is one of the earliest accounts of biographies in which she's mentioned. It's written by a man called Cogitosus, and he's written the earliest biography of Bridget, and it's been translated. Apparently, according to the 1987 translation, a certain woman who had taken the vow of chastity fell, through youthful desire of pleasure, and her womb swelled with child. Bridget, exercising the most potent strength of her ineffable faith, blessed her, causing the child to disappear without coming to birth and without pain. So that she returned the woman to her original state of penance by doing that. Which is interesting. So she does seem to have influence there over the fertility, even if that is in the negative.
Yeah. That is an aspect of the old gods and goddesses, and what has been passed on to some of the saints, in that you know, the patron saints of things, or the god and goddess of some things, for good and bad. It's not all good and it's not all bad, but it's
although, yeah, I was really intrigued when I heard that one. I wasn't sure, because when I heard that, obviously, that Bridget had gotten rid of someone's baby, that to me didn't strike me as a particularly Catholic thing.
No.
That to me was like, oh, well, hang on a minute. I thought you were very much against that. In fact, to be honest, I'm against that. Because I don't really see when the soul comes into the clump of cells. I don't see when the soul would come in, other than at conception.
Yeah, that's the same for me.
You get it when you're born.
Yeah.
I don't think it just suddenly turns up.
Does it come in at 10 weeks and 3 days?
Yeah.
You know, it's for me, it's also that the soul has to come in at conception. It's the only viable thing to me, or shortly after. But I do think we have to keep in mind that the view we have is very different from what was before. So where in our world it's a moral question, back then it might have been more a practical question, not in so much as they wanted to kill the child, so to speak, but life was a bit more back to basics than with survival and everything. So it's I do think it's somewhat similar, not equal, but similar to stories of people who felt they were forced to sell one child into slavery in order to feed the other child. So
yes, that's true. A lot of hard decisions had to be made back then.
Yeah.
And I suppose also being a saint, even within this, Bridget is functioning without of normal rules.
Mm-hmm.
So any baby that she's got rid of, presumably sent straight to heaven.
Yeah.
By virtue of her being a saint.
Yeah, I would think so. So, you know, that's a bit something that I think is lacking in many discussions about the past, that people are unable to step out of their modern view of things. and based everything on the life we are living now, which is very, very different from what it was back then.
Very true.
So can have more understanding for something like that when life is as hard as it was back then. And I'm not arguing that life was horrible back then, not at all, but there were more tough decisions to make that was literally life and death that we don't have anymore. So that is my main thinking, that there is hardly any excuse for it today because we have it too good to just get rid of them as we feel like.
I feel like I Agree has again made a very true comment. It's a fine line between sainthood and being burned as a witch.
Oh, indeed.
I mean, Joan of Arc actually did get burned as a witch, didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
Sometimes the church is like, oops, my bad. Several years later.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, we did that wrong. Never mind, we'll make her a saint instead.
Sure, that makes up for it.
Yeah.
Sure, that makes up for it.
Yeah. Well, she did manage to do both, so... but I won't say that she was able to have her cake and eat it too, but...
Well, not really a cake you'd want to eat.
No.
By the sound of it.
No, definitely not.
Oh dear. Yeah. But yeah. Maybe I think it's about time for another story.
Yeah. Which one should we take?
I don't know, Lynx. Would you like to play yours?
Yeah, you have two tonight, so mine fits well in the middle. This is an Italian version of Sleeping Beauty, so it's a bit different. It's not the worst variant of it, which I will get into after the story, but this one is called Sun, Moon and Talia. Sun, Moon and Talia. It is a well-known fact that a cruel man is generally his own hangman, and he who throws stones at heaven frequently comes off with a broken head. But the reverse of the medal shows us that innocence is a shield of fig tree wood, upon which the sword of malice is broken or blunts its point, so that when a poor man fancies himself already dead and buried, he revives again in flesh and bone, as you shall hear in the story which I am going to draw from the cask of memory with the tap of my tongue. There was once a great lord, who having a daughter born to him named Talia, commanded the seers and wise men of his kingdom to come and tell him her fortune. And after various counsellings they came to the conclusion that a great peril awaited her from a piece of stalk in some flax. Whereupon he issued a command prohibiting any flax or hemp or such like thing to be brought into his house, hoping thus to avoid the danger. When Talia was grown up and standing one day at a window, she saw an old woman pass by who was spinning. She had never seen a distaff or a spindle, and being vastly pleased with the twisting and twirling of the thread, her curiosity was so great that she made the old woman come upstairs. Then, taking the distaff in her hand, Talia began to draw out the thread, when by mischance a piece of stalk in the flax getting under her fingernail, she fell dead upon the ground, at which sight the old woman hobbled downstairs as quickly as she could. When the unhappy father heard of the disaster that had befallen Talia, after weeping bitterly, he placed her in that palace in the country, upon a velvet seat under a canopy of brocade, and fastening the doors, He quitted forever the place which had been the cause of such misfortune to him, in order to drive all remembrance of it from his mind. Now a certain king happened to go one day to the chase, and a falcon escaping from him flew in at the window of that palace. When the king found that the bird did not return at his call, he ordered his attendants to knock at the door, thinking that the palace was inhabited. And after knocking for some time, the king ordered them to fetch a vine-dresser's ladder, wishing himself to scale the house and see what was inside. Then he mounted the ladder, and going through the whole palace, he stood aghast at not finding there any living person. At last he came to the room where Thalia was lying, as if enchanted, and when the king saw her, he called to her, thinking that she was asleep. But in vain, for she still slept on, however loud he called. So, after admiring her beauty a while, the king returned home to his kingdom, where for a long time he forgot all that had happened. Meanwhile, two little twins, one a boy and the other a girl, who looked like two little jewels, wandered from I know not where into the palace and found Thalia in a trance. At first they were afraid, because they tried in vain to awaken her, but becoming bolder, the girl gently took Thalia's finger into her mouth to bite it and wake her up by this means. And so it happened that a splinter of flax came out, whereupon she seemed to awake as if from a deep sleep, and when she saw those little jewels at her side, she took them to her heart and loved them more than her life. But she wondered greatly at seeing herself quite alone in the palace with two children, and food and refreshment brought to her by unseen hands. After a time the king, calling Thalia to mind, took occasion one day when he went to the chase to go and see her. And when he found her awakened and with two beautiful little creatures by her side, he was struck dumb with rapture. Then the king told Thalia who he was, and they formed a great league and friendship, and he remained there for several days, promising as he took leave to return and fetch her. When the king went back to his own kingdom, he was forever repeating the names of Thalia and the little ones, insomuch that when he was eating he had Thalia in his mouth, and sun and moon, for so he named the children. Nay, even when he went to rest he did not leave off calling on them, first one and then the other. Now the king's stepmother had grown suspicious at his long absence at the chase, and when she heard him calling thus on Thalia, sun and moon, she waxed wroth, and said to the king's secretary, "Hark ye, friend, you stand in great danger between the axe and the block. Tell me who it is that my stepson is enamoured of, and I will make you rich. But if you conceal the truth from me, I will make you rue it." The man, moved on one side by fear and on the other pricked by interest, which is a bandage to the eyes of honour, the blind of justice, and an old horseshoe to trip up good faith, told the queen the whole truth. Whereupon she sent a secretary in the king's name to Thalia, saying that he wished to see the children. Then Thalia sent them with great joy, but the queen commanded the cook to kill them and serve them up in various ways for her wretched stepson to eat. Now the cook, who had a gentle heart, seeing the two pretty little golden pippins, took compassion on them and gave them to his wife, bidding her to keep them concealed. Then he killed and dressed two little kids in 100 different ways. When the king came, the queen quickly ordered the dishes served up, and the king fell to eating with great delight, exclaiming, "How good this is! Oh, how excellent, by the soul of my grandfather!" And the old queen all the while kept saying, "Eat away, for you know what you eat." At first the king paid no attention to what she said, but at last, hearing the music continue, he replied, I know well enough what I eat, for you brought nothing to the house." And at last, getting up in a rage, he went off to a villa at a little distance to cool his anger. Meanwhile the queen, not satisfied with what she had done, called the secretary again, and sent him to fetch Thalia, pretending that the king wished to see her. At this summons, Talia went at the very instant, longing to see the light of her eyes, and not knowing that only the smoke awaited her. But when she came before the queen, the latter said to her with the face of a Nero, and full of poison as a viper, "Welcome, Madam Sly-cheat. Are you indeed the pretty mischief maker? Are you the weed that has caught my son's eye and given me all this trouble?" When Talia heard this, she began to excuse herself, but the queen would not listen to a word, and having a large fire lighted in the courtyard, she commanded that Talia should be thrown into the flames. Poor Talia, seeing matters coming to a bad pass, fell on her knees before the queen and besought her at least to grant her time to take the clothes from off her back. Whereupon the queen, not so much out of pity for the unhappy girl as to get possession of her dress, which was embroidered all over with gold and pearls, said to her, "Undress yourself, I allow you." Then Talia began to undress, and as she took off each garment she uttered an exclamation of grief. And when she had stripped off her cloak, her gown, and her jacket, and was proceeding to take off her petticoat, they seized her and were dragging her away. At that moment the king came up, and seeing the spectacle he demanded to know the whole truth. And when he asked also for the children, and heard that his stepmother had ordered them to be killed, the unhappy king gave himself up to despair. He then ordered her to be thrown into the same fire which had been lighted for Talia, and the secretary with her, who was the handle of this cruel game and the weaver of this wicked web. Then he was going to do the same with the cook, thinking that he had killed the children. But the cook threw himself at the king's feet and said, "Truly, Sir King, I would desire no other sinecure in return for the service I have done you than to be thrown into a furnace full of live coals. I would ask for no other gratuity than the thrust of a spike. I would wish for no other amusement than to be roasted in the fire. I would desire no other privilege than to have the ashes of the cook mingled with those of a queen. But I look for no such great reward for having saved the children and brought them back to you in spite of that wicked creature who wished to kill them." When the king heard these words he was quite beside himself. He appeared to dream, and could not believe what his ears had heard. Then he said to the cook, "If it is true that you have saved the children, be assured I will take you from turning the spit and reward you, so that you shall call yourself the happiest man in the world." As the king was speaking these words, the wife of the cook, seeing the dilemma her husband was in, brought Sun and Moon before the king, who, playing at a game of three with Talia and the other children, went round and round, kissing first one, then the other. Then, giving the cook a large reward, he made him his chamberlain, and he took Talia to wife, who enjoyed a long life with her husband and the children, acknowledging that he who has luck may go to bed, and bliss will rain upon his head. Okay, I forgot to unmute myself. There I'm back on. I almost need several computers to do this. And welcome to Jewel Citizen and Chief Moody, and Offensive Username is back, and it's good to see all of you.
Yay. Yes, good to see friends.
Yeah, definitely.
That's good.
Yeah. So the D-Live the D-Live chat had a bit of food discussion going on. And
it did just a little bit.
Yeah, and the story seemed to mirror that at the end there. Though maybe in a less I'm sorry, I just got distracted by Jewel Citizen. He's saying that he's going to bed in a bit. Will I get luck raining upon my head? Well, I certainly hope so, because you certainly deserve it. So
Yes.
but perhaps not in the same way as Talia had her luck raining upon her in her sleep.
Raining luck.
Yeah. A particular kind of luck, it might seem. The Snow White, Sleeping Beauty that we mostly know of is a bit more sanitized than this version. It doesn't have any
Burning people to death.
no, not any cannibalism or attempt of cannibalism going on, and not rape. Because the original story of this is actually quite not graphic, but quite explicit, that the king actually rapes Talisa while she's sleeping. And it's more hinted at in this story. Just, them two children came, and I have no idea where they came from. But in the older version, she is woken up because she is fed by some fairies. And they are trying to have the children nursing. And by accident, the girl takes hold of her finger instead of her nipple and sucks the splinter out that way. So here the children are aged a bit, and they are just trying to wake her. So it's a bit more sanitized version, but I still think the hints are there. So as I said, it's not a sanitized version we are used to. Also, this is just me personally, for having English as my second language. I always get confused when the term kid is used for a baby goat. Because I automatically think of human children.
I think that's getting to become a bit of...
Did we lose Katrina?
Sorry, I think it went on mute again.
Yeah.
It went on mute randomly. I think it's an association, though, that a native English speaker has to, if they're not familiar with small goats cropping up in their life, I mean, you have to think as well. I think more people these days are going to be detached from a kid as a word for a baby goat.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wonder how and why Americans started calling children kids, and then why we picked it up as well. I mean, I think we just picked it up because we pick up everything that America bloody does. But I'm kind of wondering, did they call kids baby goats because they are similarly annoying, or what? I don't know.
Equally bouncing.
Equally bouncy.
Yeah.
Could be.
I tune into Right Meow some days, and she does cute videos with her Hawaiian Kitten Club. And that is everything from children to animals, and at times she do have baby goats as well, and they certainly bounce a lot.
Oh. No, like anything small humans, small cats, small dogs, small goats, babies, baby goats, it's all cute.
Yeah. And bouncy.
It's all cute.
They all seem to bounce quite a bit as well, so...
Somewhat bouncing. Evolutionary survival mechanism for them to be cute.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, definitely.
I just want to hug all the small all the small animals.
Yeah. I haven't had time to find and read the French version of this, but the Brothers Grimm apparently had. I'm sorry, the Woodlander.
Sure.
Children
Children don't bounce.
I tried it. They just cry. Oh dear.
No. Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, I just read that and I was like, how to address it?
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Don't do that. It's naughty.
I'm going to
It's
try.
an awesome stream.
Yeah. I'm going to try not to laugh for 5 minutes now. But yeah, I can try to get back on point with the aptly named Grimm brothers. They got quite caught up in the age-old rivalry between France and Germany, and with the times, I suppose the French wasn't very popular in Germany or the German states.
That doesn't surprise me much.
No, but you know, that's how it is in Europe and always have been. But they did struggle with Sleeping Beauty because apparently the French version seemed to be older than the German one, and they had to Germanize it. So they concluded that it was an original Germanic story because of the Norse sagas, in particular the saga of Sigurd and Brynhild. Because he woke Brynhild out of sleep. There was this mythological almost woman lying there asleep in a man's armor, and he got the ringmail off her, and she woke, and apparently there had been a war an unknown time before. I don't know how long, it's not said. White Rabbit Radio is hosting with 18 viewers. Thank you as always, Tim. Always good to see you. And,
Hi, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah, and welcome everyone over at White Rabbit Radio. Hope you enjoy some stories. So back to Sigurd and Brynhild. Her story was that, so unknown time before, there had been a battle between two chiefs, and Odin had sided with one, but she had given the victory to the other party. And Odin didn't like that, so he stung her with a sleeping thorn. And so she fell asleep and slept until her ringmail was cut off, which is quite interesting. But since that story involved falling to sleep by a thorn, they concluded that Sleeping Beauty was of Germanic origin. And I would definitely say that it is inspired by it. In Norwegian, the literal translation is thorn rose, which is one of the reasons why I struggle a bit with Sleeping Beauty as a title, because it's so different. But it definitely seems like it's a very old story and has different influences depending on the region it comes from. So I did choose.
It's one of those.
Yeah, go on.
It seems to be one of those archetype stories. Seems to have a lot of versions all over the place.
Yeah,
just like Cinderella and Snow White kind of are as well.
Yeah. And welcome Dave Thompson over on YouTube. Glad you subscribed to us, and we hope you enjoy the content. Those themed stories, they seem to pop up all over the place. We have seen that many times already, and we've only gone for one season. And we keep reading stories from all over Europe, and suddenly you come across a story which is eerily similar to one you've read in.
Pretty much the same, yeah.
Yeah, or several stories that contains parts of several other stories. So that
true.
mingling is very interesting.
Yeah, and I just wonder, like, as we go through and learn about more of these tropes and more of these stuff, whether it'll be at the end, like, even if we expand out into the Indo side of the Indo-European folktales, that's way off yet.
Yeah.
Whether we will just continue to see the same things and the same patterns.
Yeah. Some themes seem to be universal across almost all cultures, with tales from Africa and Asia and the Native Americans, both south and north. So that is very interesting, but also you do start to wonder when you then go back to old sources of how things really were. I was just listening to Archaeologos again this weekend with its subverted history, and one point that was made in particular by Thor Heyerdahl is that back in those days it wasn't the sea that was the barrier between regions. It was the mountains and deserts and everything. But the sea could be the highway. And, you do hear about seafaring blondes and redheads going all over the place. So they seem to pop up everywhere. So it's
you hear about Celts in China as well.
Yeah.
Karians.
Yeah, they are very interesting. They have grave goods with, in particular, clothes with a very strikingly similar pattern and everything. So that's very interesting.
It's true. But yeah, it's becoming, as you look into it more and more, the amount of links that you see, quite staggering. And it just sort of strengthens the notion that folktales point to some almost universal truths.
Yeah.
At least among the Indo-Europeans, anyway.
Yeah.
We're not really intending on diving into African folklore.
No, we're not.
I mean, if we get really stuck for material.
I seriously doubt that. We can read every single fairy tale in Europe and
in the world.
Well, only in Europe. That will keep us occupied for quite a few years, I would say. And if we also go into the old legends and myths and everything, which I definitely want to do, we're going to have a lot on our hands for quite a few years, I would say.
And the Arthurian legends. We need to do those.
Yeah,
at
definitely.
some point.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be like several streams worth of just reading those out.
Yeah.
And if I ever want to do something about Beowulf, definitely not in one go.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
started reading the sagas in preparation for this, and I'm just chomping at the bit to start narrating them. So I'm not sure how long I can keep myself in check with that. So, reading one chapter at a time, and yeah, maybe just have them on the computer for a while. But I'm really, really looking forward to that.
yeah. I mean, there's certainly things I'd love to narrate. Certainly is.
Yeah, I found a copy of the Iliad as well, and definitely wanting to narrate that one as well. And
I mean, it's so English. At some point, I hope I have a book of Rudyard Kipling poems.
interesting.
I'd hope to read them at some point down the line.
Yeah,
To read some Rudyard Kipling poems.
definitely.
It's a great book, actually. It's leather bound, and surprisingly enough, has a very Indo-European symbol on the front of it in the design.
Yeah.
It was like they were selling it real cheap at the second-hand bookstore. Real cheap.
Yeah. When was it published? Do you remember that?
I think it was like it must be from like the early 1900s or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they would have put that on it if it was. I'll have to check the date, but I don't think they would have put that on it. It was any time after World War II.
No,
I don't think they would put that on it.
No, it definitely sounds like it was pre-World War II, and also back then, getting a book for your library, a bound book and everything, that wasn't cheap. So I do think people would like a good copy of it. So it might, back in those days, actually have been a high-priced item. So
it may well have been, yeah.
Yeah. As I said before, I'd like to raid my parents' bookshelves because they have quite a lot of books from their own parents. So, turns out I have, a full collection of, the Norwegian classics and everything. So, because I suppose my parents don't want to keep them, so I might be able to inherit them. So, yeah.
Hopefully. Books are always a good thing to inherit. I inherited a lot from my dad. Terry Pratchett and Asterix and Calvin and Hobbes and Lord of the Rings, but a bunch of stuff, and that informed some of my favorite fiction and authors.
Yeah.
So it's really cool when you can inherit books.
Oh, definitely. I'm the reader of the family, so I don't suppose my sister will be putting up much of a fight with that. So, yeah, I do want to raid those shelves.
Indeed, save the books.
Yeah.
They're unappreciated when they go to a charity shop and such like.
Yeah, but they could be worse off. They could just have been thrown away. At least they are being given a second chance, at least.
I agree, for I said my dad was Terry Pratchett. My dad is not Terry Pratchett. Oh. Oh dear. Nope, my dad's not Terry Pratchett.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm
That would be a
supposed to say.
That would be a big If I was Terry Pratchett's daughter, that would be like. Does Terry Pratchett even have kids?
I have no
I
idea.
don't know if Terry Pratchett has kids.
I have no idea. I rarely know stuff about various famous persons. I might know what they do, but not much beyond that.
Weird. I know a lot about his books and the universe he writes, but I'm never like. I don't like get this burning desire to find out everything about people. So I'm like, never looked into if he had kids. I can't remember off the top of his head. I seem to think he might have some. I don't know. That's a question, isn't it? But he's a great author, even if he's quite. He comes at things from quite an atheistic viewpoint, which is a little bit tiresome in some of his books. But then again, he more than makes up for it by having just such sort of novel observations about things and mirroring so many real life things just quite so well.
Yeah.
Pointing out the absurdity in things is something he does really well.
Yeah, well, when it comes to personal faith or non-faith, that's a double-edged sword in many ways. Atheism can be a bit disturbing for some stories, but so can overly religious undertones. So it's quite a fine line, I would say. And Jewel Citizen say that Survive the Drive did a Beowulf recital to musical accompaniment.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
At
Is
the
it
close
still
of
on YouTube?
I don't know. It's was at the close of Scansa Forum in 2018, and that was superb. I haven't seen that. It's probably not on YouTube. It might be on BitChute, and I'll either take a look tonight, and if it's not there, then I'm going to ask Frody if he has a copy of it and is planning to put it up somewhere.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hey, non-fake news. Good to see you as always.
Hello.
And the Woodlander said that.
Hi, the definitely real news.
Yeah. The Woodlander say that you should do a reading of the Håvamål. Are you talking about me or Katrina? Because we are planning on doing the Eddas at one point. How we do that is still to be determined. You know,
yeah. I feel like we'd have to share the Eddas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like one single one of us, could manage to read this. We'd have to split it up.
Yeah.
We'd have to split it up. It'd have to be a mixture.
I will admit that I feel a bit. I feel a bit that the sagas are mine. It's mine.
Yes.
But
it's kind of like how I feel about the Arthurian legends. I'm kind of like mine. But there's so many of them as well. So many of them.
Yeah, I did feel that when I did A Christmas Carol. I felt somewhat that I was treading on sacred ground there. But you know, I did it with all possible respect. But there is something, it's in quote unquote ownership of stories, and when it comes to the sagas, I feel like they're my history. They are my history. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of with the Eddas as well. we kind of have the same we kind of had the same pantheon of gods,
Mm-hmm.
almost, essentially, in Anglo-Saxon
Yeah.
Britain. So when we are looking at those as Anglo-Saxon heathens, we're like, yeah, this sort of largely matches up, and then we have a few additional stories to those as well,
Yeah.
and a few differences.
Yeah. I do wonder what it would have been like if those stories had been written down from several regions which hail to the more similar to the Norse religion. Because I do think the differences would be interesting to see.
I think it would, yeah.
But most of what has come down is in the Eddas, as far as I know. I will admit I haven't looked that hard into the old Celtic systems, but it seems like the sources were more obscure.
It's quite confusing when you do get into those.
Yeah.
Because I've really tried to have a look to the extent where I was kind of looking at the Dinshenkas and stuff like that. Again, that's something that I'd like to return to the Celtic myths. I'd like to get my head around them a bit better, and maybe read some stuff from the Dinshenkas, because again, I look at Dinshenkas and Celtic myth, and also think that's very connected to me personally, because like a lot of people in the British Isles, I'd say probably my DNA is largely Celtic.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
As far as I know, I'm 100% Scandinavian, so I guess that is one reason why I'm very protective of those stories. But we are thinking of it. I actually have so many ideas that I won't have time to do them all. In particular because I want to do everything at the same time. I can be a bit eager at times, so when I get an idea, I want to do it. Yeah. And doing the Christmas Carol during Christmas definitely had me, as we say in Norway, got blood on the tooth. We really get into it. I agree. Lynx showing off her pure Aryan blood. Well,
very Indo-European.
Yeah. Well, that's how it is when you come from one of the more secluded areas in Europe. So there hasn't been a lot of mixing.
Nope, not a lot. Don't want to make just a lot of trees and mountains.
There was the occasional German, actually, and the occasional sailor that settled. With the Germans, it was from the Hansa League, because they had workshops in Norway, in particular in Bergen, and they had apprentices there, of course, and they were German apprentices, and they had their apprenticeship for free, if I remember correctly, provided that they worked for a certain amount of time, and then they were obliged to go back home and start a business there. However, at times there came this beautiful Norwegian lady, the age-old story, and they got married and ran off. So that happened a few times, but it wasn't, a large influx of German men coming. But you do get the odd German here and there, spread out over time. So,
Little bit.
yeah, and in particular in Bergen, the German influence is larger. They are sort of their own little pseudo group in Norway. Those who hail from the Hanseatic families. So,
I mean, you can tell from the name Bergen, I think.
I haven't looked
So it kind of
into.
sounds like it.
To me, it sounds very Norwegian. Bergen.
To me, it also sounds very German.
Yeah,
Because
well,
Berg, I think, is the name for mountains.
yeah, in Norwegian, one of the words for mountain is berg, which is actually quite a common last name as well. So it's one of the areas where German and Norwegian is extremely similar. So at times it's a bit hard to differentiate what is German and what is Norwegian and what's the original root, I would say.
Yeah, that's true.
Bear in mind, I am in no way a linguist, so that's how it is. So yeah. Before we end up spending all of the time talking about our plans, which may or may not happen, and we have no idea what timeline we have, we can jump over to the last story.
Yes, last story.
Yeah, that one is yours. Do you have an introduction for that?
Well, this is a Breton fairy tale, and the title in the book that I read it in is The Magic Rose. But it has to do with sort of the third theme of tonight. It was Imbolc, spring, and resurrection. And this is a story certainly containing that. It's quite a bit convoluted. It's a hero's tale, and we shall discuss after it about the significance of the rose, because I learned that there was a bit more to that. But yeah, this is the magic rose.
Sounds interesting.
The Magic Rose. An aged Breton couple had 2 sons, the elder of whom went to Paris to seek his fortune, while the younger one was timid by nature and would not leave the parental roof. His mother, who felt the burden of her age, wished the stay-at-home to marry. At first he would not hear of the idea, but at last, persuaded by her, he took a wife. He had only been married a few weeks, however, when his young bride sickened and died. Le Rose, for such was his name, was inconsolable. Every evening he went to the cemetery where his wife was buried, and wept over her tomb. One night he was about to enter the graveyard on his sad errand, when he beheld a terrible phantom standing before him, which asked him in awful tones what he did there. "I am going to pray at the tomb of my wife," replied a terrified Le Rose. "Do you wish that she were alive again?" asked the spirit. "Ah, yes," cried the sorrowing husband. "There is nothing that I would not do in order that she might be restored to me." "Hearken then," said the phantom. "Return to this place tomorrow night at the same hour. Provide yourself with a pick, and you will see what comes to pass." On the following night, the young widower was punctually at the rendezvous. the phantom presented itself before him and said, "Go to the tomb with your wife, and strike it with your pick. The earth will turn aside, and you will behold her, lying in her shroud. Take this little silver box, which contains a rose. Open it, and pass it before her nostrils 3 times, when she will awake, as if from a deep sleep." The rose hastened to the tomb of his wife, and everything happened as the phantom had predicted. He placed the box containing the rose to his wife's nostrils, and she awoke with a sigh, saying, I have been asleep for a long time." Her husband provided her with clothes, which he had brought with him, and they returned to their house, much to the joy of his parents. Some time afterward, La Rose's father died at a great age, and the grief-stricken mother was not long in following him to the grave. La Rose wrote to his brother in Paris to return to Brittany in order to receive his portion of the parental inheritance, but he was unable to leave the capital, so La Rose had perforce to journey to Paris. He promised his wife before leaving that he would write to her every day, but on his arrival in the city he found his brother very ill, and in the anxiety of nursing him back to health, he quite forgot to send his wife news of how he fared. The weeks passed, and La Rose's wife, without word of her husband, began to dread that something untoward had happened to him. Day by day she sat at her window weeping and watching for the courier who brought letters from Paris. A regiment of dragoons chanced to be billeted in the town, and the captain, who lodged at the inn directly opposite La Rose's house, was greatly attracted by the young wife. He inquired of the landlady who was the beautiful dame who sat constantly weeping at her window, and learned the details of her history. He wrote a letter purporting to come from La Rose's brother in Paris, telling her that her husband had died in the capital, and some time after paid his addresses to the supposed widow, who accepted him. They were married, and when the regiment left the town the newly wedded pair accompanied it. Meanwhile, La Rose's brother recovered from his illness, and the eager husband hastened back to Brittany. But when he arrived at his home, he was surprised to find the doors closed, and was speedily informed of what had occurred during his absence. For a while he was too grief-stricken to act, but, recovering himself somewhat, he resolved to enlist in the regiment of dragoons, in which the false captain held his commission. The beauty of his handwriting procured him the post of secretary to one of the lieutenants, but although he frequently attempted to gain sight of his wife, he never succeeded in doing so. One day the captain entered the lieutenant's office, observed the writing of La Rose, and asked his brother officer if he would kindly lend him his secretary for a few days, to assist him with some correspondence. While helping the captain, La Rose beheld his wife, who did not, however, recognize him. Greatly pleased with his work, the captain invited him to dinner. During the repast, a servant, who had stolen a silver dish, fearing that it was about to be missed, slid it into La Rose's pocket, and when it could not be found, accused the secretary of theft. La Rose was brought up before a court-martial, which condemned him to be shot. While in prison awaiting his execution, La Rose struck up an acquaintance with an old veteran named Père Lachique, who brought him his meals, and seemed kindly disposed to him. "Père Lachique," said La Rose one day, "I have 2,000 francs. If you do as I ask, they shall be yours." The veteran promised instantly, and La Rose requested that after he was shot, Lachique should go to the cemetery where he was buried and resuscitate him with the magic rose, which he had carefully preserved. On the appointed day, La Rose was duly executed, but Père Lachique, with his pockets full of money, went from inn to inn, drinking and making merry. Whenever the thought of La Rose crossed his mind, he muttered to himself in bibulous accents, "Poor fellow, poor fellow! He is better dead. This is a weary world. Why should I bring him back to it?" When Père Lachique had caroused with his comrades for some days, the 2,000 francs had almost disappeared. Then remorse assailed him, and he made up his mind to do as Larose had wished. Taking a pick and an axe, he went to the graveyard. But when he struck the grave with his tools and the earth rolled back, disclosing the body of Larose, the old fellow was so terrified that he ran helter-skelter from the spot. A draught of good wine brought back his failing courage, however, and he returned, and passed Larose 3 times under the nostrils of his late acquaintance. Instantly Larose sat up. "By my faith, I've had a good sleep," he said, rubbing his eyes. "Where are my clothes?" Père Lachaise handed him his garments, and after he had donned them, they quitted the graveyard with all haste. Larose now found it necessary to cast about for a living. One day he heard the sound of a drum in the street, and, following it, found that it was beaten by a crier, who promised in the king's name a large reward to those who would enlist as sentinels to guard a chapel where the king's daughter, who had been changed into a monster, was imprisoned. Larose accepted the offer, and then learned, to his dismay, that the sentinel who guarded the palace between the hours of 11 and midnight was never seen again. On the very first night that he took up his duties, this perilous watch fell to his lot. He felt his courage deserting him, and he was about to fly when he heard a voice say, "Larose, where are you?" Larose trembled. What do you wish with me?" he asked. "Hearken to me, and no evil will befall you," replied the voice. "Soon a great and grisly beast will appear. Leave your musket by the side of the sentry-box, climb on top, and the beast will not touch you." As 11 o'clock struck, Larose heard a noise, and hastened to climb to the top of the sentry-box. Soon a hideous monster came out of the chapel, breathing flames and crying, "Sentinel of my father, where art thou, that I may devour thee?" As it uttered these words, it fell against the musket, which it seized between its teeth. The creature disappeared into the chapel, and Larose descended from his perch. He found the musket broken into 1,000 pieces. The old king was delighted to learn that his sentinel had not been devoured, for in order that his daughter should be delivered from her enchantment as a beast, it was necessary that the same sentinel should mount guard for 3 consecutive nights, between the hours of 11 and midnight. On the following night, Larose was pacing up and down on guard, when the same voice addressed him, telling him on this occasion to place his musket before the door of the chapel. The beast issued as before, seized the musket, broke it into small pieces, and returned to the chapel. On the 3rd night, the voice advised him to throw open the door of the chapel, and when the beast came out, to run into the building himself, where he would see a leaden shrine, behind which he could take refuge, and where he would find a small bottle, with the contents of which he was to sprinkle the beast's head. With its usual dreadful roar, the monster issued from the chapel. Larose leapt past it and ran for the leaden shrine. It followed him with hideous howls, and he only reached the protective sanctuary in time. Seizing the little bottle which lay there, he fearlessly fronted the beast and sprinkled its contents over its head. Instantly it changed into a beautiful princess, whom Larose escorted to her delighted parents. Larose and the princess were betrothed and duly married, and shortly afterward the king gave up his throne to his son-in-law. One day the new king was inspecting the regiment of dragoons to which he had once belonged. "Colonel," he said, "I miss a man from your regiment." "It is true, sire," replied the colonel. "It is an old fellow called Père Lachaise, whom we had left at the barracks playing his violin. The old good-for-nothing. I wish to see him," said the king. Père Lachaise was brought forward, trembling, and the king, tearing the epaulettes from the shoulders of the captain who had stolen his wife, placed them on those of Père Lachaise. He then gave orders for a great fire to be lit, in which were burned the wicked captain and the wife who had so soon forgotten her husband. Larose and his queen lived happily ever afterward. which is rather odd, is it not, when one thinks of the treatment meted out to his resuscitated spouse? But if the lights in folktale are bright, the shadows are correspondingly heavy, and rarely does justice go hand in hand with mercy in legend.
And getting all my muting unmuted. So that was the last story for tonight, and an interesting one.
Hello. Yeah, I just had to pause YouTube stream there. Yeah, so that indeed is the last story for tonight. And it was one of the only stories that I could actually find that was really very directly about resurrection. Well, you know, there was a folk story, that wasn't a religious story. And it's interesting because I just hadn't encountered another story of its type, really. I mean, it's a bit like, I think it was heroes being brought back from the dead in the Mummers plays, if I remember correctly, from when I was looking at that from Yule. So there might be other instances of stuff like this. But it's certainly an intriguing one. And what I wondered about first was really the symbology of the rose. Because, you know, in Europe we really do have a thing about the rose. In Britain, it's also definitely a thing about the rose. It's generally regarded as this most perfect of flowers. And I suppose because it does sort of... It very much represents a flower which is very perfectly round and symmetrical. As a center, which is, I suppose, makes it a sort of solar symbol, a wheel type of thing. It's so like perfect and enclosed in its shape like that. And of course, we have the associations of the rose with the heart, with love, and really depending upon the color can mean different things, because, you know, we have the white rose, which is associated with purity and virginity, and then the red rose, which is associated with almost the opposite of passion and desire and beauty and love. So, yeah, you have sort of two different aspects there. And of course, it's very associated with femininity as well. You might call or associate with a beautiful girl with a rose. But I was looking particularly, really, for associations between roses and death. Roses and death. And I think that there was an association between roses and death. Or at least for the Romans there was. Because they scattered rose petals on graves at a festival called Rosalia, which I think did happen around this sort of time. Well, it happened because you could decorate the graves of the dead with violets, or you could, at other times, you could decorate them with roses. And those two flowers, I think violets are one of the earlier ones to bloom in that season, so that they come out earlier than roses, and roses are blooming in like May or something like that. I mean, I suppose it does depend on where you live. They're a flower of status as well. Emperors wore them for crowns. So they are said to actually symbolize martyrdom and death and resurrection. And the red rose, in classical mythology anyway, was said to have been created when Aphrodite was running to tend to her wounded lover, Adonis, because Aphrodite is actually the consort of Ares, or Mars, god of war, and she was running to attend to her wounded lover, Adonis, and she pricked her foot on the white rose, and that is how it allegedly turned red. So yeah, you do have these associations. And most interestingly, though, in the context of this tale, I did actually find that roses are apparently associated with Hecate or Hecate, I suppose you would pronounce her name. And she is definitely associated with witchcraft, night, the moon, ghosts, and necromancy. And that is interesting, therefore, that you'd have a rose and it would be being used to revive in this way. So that is I didn't know that the rose had those associations with death. So I'm wondering, this is a Breton story. If perhaps the rose had similar associations for Celtic people, or, obviously the Bretons and the Romans were mixing from really quite early on. They're around a lot at the same time as each other. So whether Breton folk tales have sort of picked up that association from classical mythology.
Yeah, that's many interesting points. I suppose that last question might be answered with the history of the rose itself, when it came to the islands and everything. I don't know if you have
That's true.
looked into that.
Yes, I would imagine. I haven't directly looked into it, but I would imagine that I've been to Brittany. Let me tell you, it doesn't seem like the type of place where you'd quite naturally grow a nice rose. Don't think that they particularly like year-round wet weather.
Well, you could say the
Because
same.
Brittany has got more of the weather in Brittany has more of a temperament like that of England and England and Scotland. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what roses like. I have a feeling like they like vaguely sunny.
Yeah, and not too cold. Of course, we do have roses in Norway as well, and generally in Scandinavia. But it's definitely not native to the area. Not in the common rose as we know it. So for a long time it was, as far as I know, I haven't had time to look very deeply into roses, but as far as I know, it was very much an upper class thing in Norway, and they were for the most part foreigners. They weren't Norwegians, they were Danes and Germans for the most part. So of course it was also availability with gardens and everything. But
It's true. I think roses are, they're more of a fancy thing in Britain as well, which always led me to sort of think, nah, that's not that mustn't be a native flower for us then. Like we have wildflowers that we call, whatever roses, something roses. There's quite a lot of wildflowers with rose in the name.
Yeah.
But they're not all truly actually roses.
Yeah, we have that as well. I don't remember the English translation for it. So I can't really comment on that. I agree. Donated a diamond. Fantastic stories, ladies. Thank you. You are most welcome. We are glad you like them.
Oh.
And 1690 Sparky donated an ice cream and then a diamond with thank you for the great. Thank you, ladies. That was great stories and thank you very much.
Thank you all a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
What else is going on?
I agree. Asks if any of us are watching. I watch him occasionally.
Have watched some stuff. There's some stuff that I agree with more than others.
Yeah.
With Robert Sapper.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Just a very quick goodbye to the Woodlander. He has to go, so hope to see you next week.
Bye.
Goodbye, and have a great night.
You're going to bed now. You've made Jewel. Now you've failed to make Jewel Citizen go to bed. Apparently.
Well,
Jewel Citizen's dad's given up. He's not listening.
So the question is...
So you're tired in the morning, it's your fault, Jewel.
So the question is he doing that as a good role model, practice what you preach, or is it that he goes to bed because of irritation of not being able to get Jewel in bed? That sounded very weird, and that was not my intention. I'm sorry.
The innuendo was strong with that one.
I'm sorry, it's the translation. It's late at night, so my English can fail a bit when I'm tired. I was meaning getting the little boy Jewel Citizen to bed.
Considering what I had to shout last week in my last story, I mean, I think at least one person in the chat was like,
yeah.
I'm not going to repeat that. If you listen to it and think that's dirty, that's on you.
Apparently it sounds like I'm projecting there. Well, I do like Jewel, but I wouldn't take it that far.
I mean, several of us only know each other from the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we necessarily know what we're getting into.
Exactly.
In that regards.
So, maybe in my mind, Jewel Citizen is like, a god or something. Just a gigantic, muscled hero, the hero of the chats.
Literally the golden one.
Yeah. Non-fake news donated a diamond. Thank you very much.
Sometimes people's avatars come to especially if they're a face, they just come to replace their face in the mind. So whenever I think of Donald, the guest we had on our Death Part 1, I just think about his crazy dude covered in blood avatar. To me, Nullis is just a hooded dude.
Well, I suppose I'm just a cat then. And you are a Dragoneye.
Apparently. I think it's when they're closer to human that helps. Like
Yeah.
I can conceptualize of you looking like something other than a cat, because you actually being a cat is ludicrous to my brain.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not a furry, so you
Pass
don't
the
have to
message on to
worry.
the golden one for you, Katrina. Ah, the golden one is not quite my type. Not quite. I could admittedly see why he's very good looking, but it's not quite my type.
Yeah, I will have to agree with that. I'm not actually sure if I have a type, so yeah.
I always tended to go for absolute. Just it was always the clever ones.
Mm-hmm.
My my husband is clever. It's annoying. You can never win an argument with him.
That is annoying in the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to go for the personality more than looks and any external trappings, really. You know, I can have an ideal in my head, and then I meet someone, and it's only personality in the end. You know, and of course a personal connection. So that will have to be present for anything.
Golden one cry as if nah, the golden one's like happily married.
I
He's
do.
like happily married.
Yeah, I suspect he's very happy with his wife, and all the best to them. I hope they have a wonderful and long life together.
Yes.
Welcome.
We're all gonna make it.
Yeah, and welcome.
Okay, Sheila.
Thank you for pronouncing that for me. I was just stumbling on the name. Welcome. We hope you will enjoy.
Presuming it's a German surname anyway, it looks like it should be said Sheila. Hey Sheila. 79. You're going German with the number as well.
Well,
they'll have a juicy life. Juicy. In fact, they'll have a glorious life, if anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely glorious.
Yeah.
I like the Golden One's content. He has his phrases though. Yeah.
I haven't watched much of him, so I can't really comment on that. But it was actually I think it was through him I first heard of the Green Knight a couple of years back. It happened to show up in my recommended, so that was quite interesting as I was connecting that to the Game of Thrones books. So that was interesting. And welcome, Dan Simon. Good to see you.
Yay! More followers on the DLive. Yes. With regards to the platforms, we might be getting a Trovo. We're looking into that.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case anyone's shifting or thinking of shifting over to Trovo, we are thinking of going there.
Yeah, I also hear,
just
from what I hear,
definitely.
it works better than DLive as well. So that might be an option for people who have problems with DLive. So it will be very difficult to keep track of 3 chats.
Yes, it will be quite difficult to keep track of track of free chats because we
Yeah.
stream to Periscope, don't we? But that doesn't really have a chat as far as I know.
It does. We did get one comment the first time we streamed there, but I didn't see that until much later. But usually it only have viewers. It doesn't really have comments.
I'm just looking at the chat.
Yeah.
Kate looks evil as F. No, she's just misunderstood.
Yeah.
Just misunderstood, mate.
Yeah.
Misunderstood. Necromancy is a misunderstood art.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's not really as bad as you think.
Just call in the afterlife. Just, getting to come back here and answer a few questions. Odin did do that, actually. He did a necromancy.
Yeah. Shadow DB say that Joe will take 50% of donation, and that is true. We are looking into starting an entropy.
Yes.
If there is any interest for that. And they only take as much as their payment provider charge them. So they keep the prices as low as possible. So 50%
we have been
is
thinking entropy would be a good idea. Lots of people do have an entropy.
So if anyone wants to support, then we would have it, and it's completely voluntary, so it could just stay there. And that's fine.
Also, there seems. I also get your point. The next point there. The sort of is it a bit of a setup? Well, you never do know really when a new platform comes along.
Yeah, but
how it's gonna be.
Yeah. However, for us personally, we talk fairy tales. It's not really that much of a glowy subject, so we don't need an X tag for this. It's not controversial, so
literally just fairy tales. If they start banning us, then it really just puts them firmly, squarely in the wrong.
Yeah. Then it's not worthy of a platform anyway, so. Yeah, spider senses can come up a bit. I don't really.
It's unfortunate. We do always got to be careful. Whatever platform, being pro-European.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently that's the ultimate sin. I did come across a video that was quite interesting a few months back about fairy tales. And it was a woman who was interviewing her son, actually, who is a folklorist. And the vast majority of the video was very good, and at the end they came into the topic about how fairy tales had been used in the 1930s and 40s in Germany and how bad that was. And they really went into an anti-German rant. All I could think about was how they are subverting not only our stories with theater and movies and everything today, but even our history. And then people spurg out about Germany under a certain 12 years, how they use their stories as propaganda, as if that isn't happening now. It's just
I
ridiculous.
know. When you get whole books like Brenda is a sheep,
Mm-hmm.
which is yeah, I don't know if everybody's heard of that book, but Brenda is not a wolf. Brenda is a sheep.
Yeah.
Yes. Brenda's woolly jumper is in fact better than the sheep's wool because it's all colourful. Yeah. That's just one of the modern stories that
Yeah.
we're getting these days.
Yeah. And I agree in saying that I hate that our German brothers and sisters have to deal with so much in the media. It makes me sick. And I agree. I just had to say that. Just because yeah, I'm tired.
Germans are you don't often find British people saying this, but actually I like Germans. Germans are a lovely nation of people, and they have many wonderful little customs that they still keep today. And the amount of stuff that they've been through is horrific, and I know a fair bit of their history.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I totally agree with I agree.
Yeah. I have never hated the Germans, and the Second World War is very prevalent in Norway. It's it's almost turned into some sort of foundation myth, almost. Because first we were in the union with Sweden and Denmark, then that broke up and we were under Denmark for 400 years, which is called the Long Night in Norway. Then we had almost 100 years under Sweden, and then we had 35 years of freedom before the Germans came. So when you put it into that historical context, I sort of understand it, but they have fused that with the hysteria over that war. So it's all that propaganda is really strong, and now they want to pump it up even more. Probably because the younger generation don't really care, which is quite natural. Time passes and new generations don't hold to those things as firmly as their mothers and the parents and grandparents did. But it's really skewed in Norway. But for me, that didn't make sense. The Danes were our brothers and sisters, our best of friends, and they ruled us for 400 years. And we were under the Germans for 5 years, and they are, the devil incarnate, basically. It never made sense to me, that view. It's so I was always interested in what was really happening, what was really going on, what was the real reasons behind it, and of course it's way more than one megalomaniac in Germany,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the reasons I like to dig into the folklore and the pre-Christian religions is that, particularly for the UK, I think we have to find something better to base our identity on than 2 world wars and 1 World Cup.
Yeah.
That is the phrase that we apparently base pride in our nation on.
Yeah.
And it's just so easily demolished. It's so easily brought down. It doesn't have any sort of metaphysical truth to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be getting back to the stuff prior to the wars, prior to the colonialism, even. The empire is a thing that's gone. And actually finding what there is in our deep roots to draw from.
Yeah.
Because I believe many of our current myths about the foundation of our country are purely materialist. We're better because we won. We're better because we won this and we did that and we conquered this. Like, I think the empire maybe started off in a spirit of glory, but then quickly became very about the materialistic aspect of the thing.
Yeah,
And so it's not an empire like the Roman Empire.
No, the merchant
Or
aspects
something like that.
the merchant aspect were quite strong from the very early stages, and not just in Britain, but in France and Spain and Portugal and everything. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, we really have to find things to love and to build our identity on, which are authentically ours, and
Yeah.
which have deep roots and meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know that's going to make me incredibly popular among certain people, but was I even popular among them in the first place?
Yeah, well, a popularity contest can go a certain place, in my opinion. I've never been interested in them. It's actually a main reason why I never went on Facebook, because I was introduced to Facebook with getting more friends and followers and all of that, and I just went, oh my god, I couldn't stand that in school. I'm not doing that now. So of course later
you don't even flip and know.
Yeah,
Trying to follow you.
Yeah,
on Facebook.
So a little while later, all of the bad stuff with Facebook started to show, with the spying and collecting information and everything. And I just went, oh, I'm so glad I've never went into that. They don't have I haven't willingly let them have my information directly. So I'm not really that type at all. And some people, and I'm not only talking about Englishmen now, some want to hold on to a certain aspect of the past, in my opinion, a bit too hard, and that goes for most groups. And I do think it's an important point that we can't go back. It's sort of a meme that, we went back to the 50s, but the 50s led to what we have here. So do you really want to go back to that? And
no. You don't. You can't go back to what already broke.
No, but you can preserve what was good about that, about an earlier,
exactly,
an earlier period. But that period won't define everything that you are. You are your entire history, not just a short snippet of it. So. You have to know your roots and create a new future. So, as I said, you can't go back. You can only go forward. But
I agree. Once the Iron Age. Back to the Iron Age. Mod huts. Forging things. None of this 50s nonsense. I mean, that's a bit me. I'm just like, yeah, sure. Let's have the Mad Max Star Wasteland. Let's have the mod huts back. Might be fun.
Yeah.
Let us distribute the rewards.
Yeah.
Do the chest.
Yeah. Do the trust. Oh, thank you, Sparky.
Wait,
Based
Got
mod
it.
huts.
based mod huts. Reject decadence.
Yeah.
Embrace mod.
Yeah. Well,
Return to monkey.
yeah. Well, returning to Ashalogos and his subverted history, just for a moment. When he is having his bit of editorial and what he admired about the Scythians and the Gothics and everything, I wholeheartedly agree. Being so self-reliant that you can just go anywhere and have no worries about making it. So,
Yeah. Who got the lemons? I agree, got lemons. 197 lemons. 1690 Sparky got 113 lemons. Aussie DM got 82 lemons. Shadow the Beast 65 lemons. And Elliot Page posted the money Pepe appropriately and then got 55.2 lemons.
is that a magical money Pepe? Post the Pepe and get money? Thank you. I agree.
You do be dancing around in raining money.
Yeah. Thank you, Shadow of the Beast and Sparky. That is most kind of you.
And I agree. 2 diamonds, do I agree as well? D-Live's making the stream buffer for you.
Yeah.
That sucks. It's GameStop Pepe. He's rated in. He's been rated in on them stonks.
Yeah. Well, try to refresh OCDM. That usually helps. And we are finishing off anyway.
Yes, we're finishing off now. We sometimes just don't know what plays up for people with the D-Live.
Yeah, it's a bit unpredictable in many ways. So sometimes many people have buffering issues, others don't. It depends a bit on browser and everything, so yeah, D-Live is a weird space.
But Pepe's running so fast he's going round.
Yeah. Well, that's the best way to trip up if you do trip up, so just roll around
right back on his feet again.
Yeah.
Do a barrel roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is all we have for tonight. Oh, thank you very much for the diamond. The news.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the compliment. We are very glad that you are enjoying it. Okay,
Yes. Oh, the best 2 ladies on D-Live.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
cute.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Elliot Page. I don't want that. I'm sorry, it was too hideous.
I know, it was really, it was like, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. It's like, whoa, that's a weird cat Pepe now.
Yeah.
Elliot Page just here with the freakiest stickers.
Well, please
He's got all the freakiest stickers.
Yeah, please do remember we are sensitive women here, so, you have to create a safe space for us. Yeah, extremely.
Yes. Delicate flowers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Delicate roses.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I might look scaly, but I'm very sensitive, really.
I'm not sure
So yeah.
what I look like in that sense, so. Thank you for the rose,
You look like
Elliot Page.
You look like a particularly enigmatic Lynx.
Yeah, that's true. And that was what I was aiming for, so I achieved that. Thank you.
Well, that is all. That is all for tonight, folks.
Yeah.
That's all for tonight. We better draw a line under it here before we start going on about. That's going to get us in trouble.
Yeah, it seems like we're both a bit talkative tonight. Maybe not always on point, but we do hope you still enjoyed yourself, and you did get 3 stories from us, so we didn't cheat that promise. We do have stories every single week.
Going to be forests next week. That is the theme. And then, of course, it is going to be Valentine's Day after that.
Yeah, and I've come across some interesting stuff on that, so stay tuned.
Oh, nice. Yes, we will be telling you stories about love. So, regardless of whether you do or don't currently have anyone, we hope we can tell you some nice stories.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, that's the plan for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
any more
hopefully
guests soon? Well, we hope to ask people.
Yeah, we have a little list with people we want to have on. We just have to reach out and also think about what would be the best time to have them on. And of course, if that is a good time for them, so we do have that in mind.
Oh, thanks, Elliot.
Yeah.
Well, night. We love you too, all of our Sparks.
Yeah, our little
it's
Sparky
really
family.
Cool.
Our little Sparky family. It's so
Little Sparky family.
Yeah.
Starting a massive conflagration. Get Jared stealing all the snow to read Snow White. White.
That was a good one. Okay, well, good night, everyone.
You wanted to read it just for the amount of times you'd have to say the word.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be quite funny. But we will draw the end here, so have a wonderful evening, everyone, and have a wonderful week. We will be next.
A wonderful evening.
I can't talk, so it's a good time to stop. We will be back next Sunday, same time, same place. Perhaps also Trovo. We will see. So yeah, hope you had a good evening with us, and hopefully we will see you next week. So good night.
Goodbye. Good night.
Bye.